Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS. This is Ukraine War news update, second part there for the 29th of January 2024. Let's go to where we normally start, the aid section, military assistance and equipment. EU plans to target Hungary's economy if it blocks aid to Ukraine. So this is a $50 billion EU package from the EU, Euro package from the EU that Hungary is looking like it might veto. It's long put itself against that. As a result, the EU's gone away and thought about Plan B and Plan C, but it's coming back with this, with Plan A pretty much intact, but also the idea that, do you know what, Victor? If you say no to this, we're going to screw over your economy. And it ain't going to be pretty. And actually, it's quite nice to see the EU get some teeth here, because there isn't too much they can do in terms of recalcitrant EU members that aren't going to play ball on really hugely important issues. They can take away voting rights, but there isn't much of a mechanism for ousting people out of the EU, and they don't really want to do that anyway. You know, they're rather unity. If you throw someone out, then you're throwing them towards someone like Russia. This is the argument I've said about Hungary and about Turkey. Turkey is in NATO for a huge number of strategically important reasons, right? Bosphorus Straits, access to the Black Sea, Turkey controls that. The crossroads of the east to the west, the north to the south, Europe to Asia, and to the Middle East and Africa. So Turkey is there, right there. And you would rather Turkey was in NATO than Turkey was with Russia. Okay, so the importance of you can easily say, oh, Turkey should be thrown out of NATO, but actually that ain't a good idea. You are throwing them to, it's a zero-sum game here. They're out of NATO, they're in with BRICS, or some kind of axis of evil potentially. And the same with the Hungary. If you throw them out of the EU, yeah, you're really annoying and you're messing everything up. But if you throw you out, you will go full dictatorship. You'll go full authoritarian under the Kremlin rule, and then you'll be on the doorstep of Europe. You'll be trying to attract Serbia next to you, and other places around you. It's a real challenge. So you'd rather use the mechanisms that you can to change Hungary to fall in line with the EU. And that seems to be what's going on here. So Brussels may damage Hungary's currency and investor confidence, aiming to pressure Orban. If Hungary persists, EU leaders could threaten to cut all funding to provoke market reactions. So the market then rejects Hungary, so to speak. Actually, money talks, doesn't it? And if Hungary's suddenly met with an economic black hole, then yeah, that could force Orban's hand to make decisions that align with Europe's intentions more broadly. This is why we've seen Hungary and Slovakia say, yeah, okay, we're happy to sell weapons to Ukraine. Like, we'll have our ideologically pro-Kremlin stance, but actually, if you want to buy our weapons, go for it, because we need to employ our citizens and they need to pay tax. Anyway, Phillips O'Brien here says, about time Hungary can't stand in the way of Europe aiding Ukraine, especially the US being useless right now. That's pretty harsh, but that's what a lot of people are thinking. Brussels has drawn up a plan to sabotage, really strong word that, sabotage Hungary's economy. Viktor Orban blocks a €50 billion aid package to Ukraine this week, according to secret internal documents seen by the Financial Times that lays out Budapest's economic weaknesses and how to exploit them. You can bet your bottom dollar that the EU has done some opposition fact-finding, as if they're doing a campaign against Hungary. They know the weaknesses, the financial weaknesses of Hungary, and it's like pressing on that wound. Oh yeah. You want to support Russia, and some people might see this as hugely problematic in terms of democracy and trying to get votes. This is realpolitik, and when you have someone who is so overtly under the influence of a dictator, whose entire raison d'etre, it seems to be, is ridding the world of EU unity and European unity as well, then actually you absolutely are justified in this kind of activity against Hungary. It is so important for the safety of the world. Now, the latest coming out today, however, is... I've lost it. Let me just find that. Here it is. So, this is no report saying Hungary signals willingness to compromise on EU aid for Ukraine. Quelle surprise. Prime Minister Orban, previously critical, seems to be open to using the EU budget for a 50 billion euro aid package ahead of the emergency summit. That's according to Reuters. Money talks, it appears. So, that'd be phenomenally good news. If the EU budget, the EU aid package is released, then, and do you know what? Lots of people have been asking me about this. If that 50 billion euro package is released, could it be that Europe then is able to buy American goods? So all that ammunition that's stuck in the US, unable to be moved to Ukraine because of the budget impasse in Congress, could the Europeans then buy that? Or you could be really cynical and say that could work to America's advantage, which is they say, oh, we're stuck. This aid is stuck in Congress. We can't do anything. The Europeans come along and buy loads of American stuff. And America goes, yeah, thank you very much. And then we'll build a load of new stuff and get that to you, which is money. And, it could be a net gain for the US. But that's me being super, super cynical. Okay. Head of Presidential Office Andriy Yermak and Minister of Foreign Affairs Kuleba has met with the Hungarian Minister of Foreign Affairs Peter Szijjártó and his team in Uzhhorod. So basically, this is in Ukraine. The Hungarian foreign minister has come to Ukraine. We are working to establish relations. We need frank and constructive dialogue. We are ready. I know this is in the military aid package section, but actually, I think this is all kind of connected. There's no surprise that this meeting is taking place just before the 50 billion euro aid package is voted on or is put to the EU member states this week. So that is happening. Okay, France will be able to provide the Ukrainian army with 3,000 155mm shells per month. This was stated by Deputy Defense Minister of Ukraine Lieutenant General Ivan Havrilyuk. France plans to produce 78 Caesars for Ukraine, 6 of which will be delivered in the near future, he added. Now, some people have said 3,000, is that all? And you can argue that. Yep, 3,000 a month ain't going to get you an awful lot. That's sort of, 100 shells a day? Okay, whoop-de-doo. France has a big potential. It's got a huge arms, looking like being the second biggest arms exporter in the world at the moment. I guess I'm not trying to defend France, but rather than just looking at that 3,000, you've got to look at everyone. So if they produce 3,000, there's I don't know how many people are producing arms for Ukraine at the moment, but if you add everyone together, that they're doing 3,000, they're doing 5,000, they're doing 2,000, they're doing 12,000 a month, then you start getting to a number that's actually really really useful. And the Germans are looking to get to 700,000 a year, so that's going to be, broadly divide that by 10 and a little bit, so that's going to be, 70,000 a month or there or thereabouts. Maybe let's put that down 50,000 a month. Okay, then we're starting to get to a picture that is healthy for Ukraine. So don't just concentrate on the France number there and think that's rubbish, because they aren't the only ones involved in this. However, could they produce more? I'm sure they can. I don't know whether they're looking at ramping up further beyond the 3,000 or whether that's what they're going to be able to produce, and then that's it. I'm sure someone let me know on that. So Sky News is reporting a Ukrainian Navy commander signaling Kyiv would have won faster or would win faster if there's permission to fire Western weapons deep inside Russia. We all know this and we all been moaning about this, but it's interesting when someone very formally comes out and says it. So Ukrainian naval commander Oleksiy Nezhpapa told Sky News that the state of the war would have been very different if allies had not given restrictions to Kyiv on the use of Western weapons. In an interview published on the 27th, Vice Admiral Nezhpapa signalled Kyiv would be able to win the war faster if it had permission to fire Western weapons against targets inside Russia. The Sky News reported, quote, we must have the capabilities to make sure that Russia will give up forever the thought of even looking in Ukraine's direction, including at sea. He was quoted as saying, absolutely agree. I find no fault with that position, but it's good to hear that being vocalized explicitly. Right. Quote from Rustem Umarov, this coming from the Ukrainian Review. The enemy also understands the importance of technology. Russia has invested in the production of FPV drones, and recently the Russian potential of FPV drones somewhat exceeded Ukraine's capabilities in this field, Rustem Umarov, the defense minister, says. It's a bit vague. Russian capabilities somewhat exceed Ukraine's capabilities in this field. That's capabilities, not capacity, which I think there's an important difference there. I've been talking about how Russia claims they're making 6 times the amount of drones as Ukraine each month, and yet we're not seeing evidence of that. It's not transferring into visual evidence of that amount of kit being used on the front lines and the mass destruction of Ukrainian equipment. Yes, they're using them against trenches and dugouts and troops, but I don't think we've seen that claim manifest in reality. And not only that, but we've seen many allies and home production taking place. I don't know, when you look at the Ukrainian figures, when the Ukrainian MOD release figures, right, they're not taking into account what Greg Terry, myself, Prof. Gerdes and Rick the Ukrainian are doing in fundraising for a bunch of drones, right? We've not told anyone. No one knows the true number of that. I mean, Greg knows, we know, but we haven't put that out and submitted that to the Ukrainian MOD. And you go onto Twitter and you look at how many units are fundraising for drones at any one time. And people like Null Reports doing their stuff, and they've just got another 115 drones they provide. You start adding that together, and I wonder if the MOD has no handle on that, or is not reporting that. You're thinking, well, that's another X number of drones that the Ukrainians are getting hold of. Are the Russians doing that? Do they have people from nations all around the world fundraising for the Russians to provide drones for the Russian troops? No, they don't. And so therefore we can look at the raw figures of production over the between the two countries, but actually there are other ways that they're getting drones, and of course then it's those drones that are provided by other nations as well. Now, the capability difference is another question, and I talked yesterday, again, I mentioned this, that I think the Russians do have more capable drones in certain areas. The question is that scaled up? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I would doubt Russia, just because of what other Russian sources have been saying recently about how they're not reactive, about how they produce something and then they say, right, you're going to make that for 6 months. And then there's no kind of reactivity on that production line. And then 6 months later, they're still producing that. It's like, yeah, that's now obsolete because we need it like this rather than like that. I don't know whether the Russia have the ability to scale up that capability advantage that they have in certain areas. But nonetheless, German drone manufacturer Conton Systems has started the delivery of 100 Trinity drones of various models on schedule. So what Ukraine have is a massive variety of drones. And we already had heard previously, what were the numbers of the different drones they're producing? Is it 40 different types of drones they're producing indigenously? I don't know. I could be wrong there. So just a wide variety of drones that they're producing themselves. And then they're getting in drones from Quantum Services, Hydron, all these different drone manufacturers. And you can go to Denmark, you can go to the Baltics, you can go to all these different nations, UK, heavily involved. And you start building all these numbers and capabilities up. And actually, I don't think it's so clear cut, certainly going forward, that Russia will be able, either does or will be able to maintain a drone capability advantage. Because I think there are so many nations that are getting involved with the drone coalitions that I talked about the other day, that will be wanting feedback to improve their own drone capabilities. This is, so say the UK says, here's £200 million, which we have done, towards a drone partnership, a bilateral partnership. This is going to be an opportunity for the UK to make sure that we have the best drones that we possibly can for our army. There's no point saying, oh, we're going to help you out with your drones and we're going to spend 200 million quid on really shite drones that do a pretty crap job of X or Y. It's going to be like, we are going to invest a bunch of money in you, which is actually investing in us. What we want to get out of this, say the UK MOD, is the very best drones that we can use for our armed forces in a future conflict, and the best training for our guys that will be learning from you guys, and the best feedback of data from you guys on how best to use these drones. And so every single partnered nation with Ukraine that is helping with drones, I think, will be seeking to help with the best capability drones they possibly can in whatever given field they're looking at. Because obviously drones, you can have big Reaper style drones that are doing like long distance reconnaissance. Okay, it might not be that, but it might be smaller drones that have this particular need and that particular need over there. So I think going forward, I don't think Russia will maintain a drone capability advantage. Yes, they are technologically advanced in many ways, Russia, and in the military sector. But I think when you have this many countries seeking to help Ukraine, I just don't think that's sustainable for Russia. But that could be me just being too positive for Ukraine. Finland has quietly filled its wartime stockpiles and is activating some of the so-called production reservation agreements, which means that companies produce at the armed forces' request what is needed for logistics, basically wartime economy light. This is really important. The Finnish Defence Forces, FDF, received extra money right in the spring of 2022 and started working on increasing stockpiles immediately, quite luckily before many other European states woke up to the issue, says the logistics chief, which means that the orders have been coming in. The analysis that is needed is based both on long-term assessments and the analysis of Ukraine's ammunition consumption. Finland is already producing 5 times more heavy artillery munitions than pre-2022, but the capacity isn't at max yet. It's not about ammo, though, but everything that is needed to sustain long-time warfighting operations. Luckily, thanks to security of supply philosophy, Finland had stockpiles of raw materials and production lines ready to be taken into use if needed. This is like Finland is ahead of the game here. Apart from domestic arms industry like Patria, the quote production reservation agreements include a number of civilian companies as well. Sometimes the FDF have supplied the companies with the necessary production equipment that is now to be test activated. In other words, there's this private-public sector interaction there. Beyond the domestic arrangements, Finland is working on at least doubling its ammunition production capacity, which can make it one of the largest producers in Europe. So, Torquay, I should have said this after the France piece. France producing 3,000. What are Finland producing? If they're going to be looking at being one of the largest, I don't think they'll be able to beat Germany, but who knows? The aim is twofold: to secure their own stockpiles and to maintain capacity to support Ukraine for years to come. This is long-term strategic support of Ukraine, which we'll come back to in looking at the Finnish presidential elections that are just taking place. So anyway, 3 general inspectors from the US Ministry of Defense, the State Department and USAID have arrived in Kyiv. A US ambassador to Ukraine, Bridget Brink, has said, quote, "We are pleased to once again welcome to Kyiv 3 inspectors general from the MOD, State Department and USAID. Their meetings with implementers, partners and the Ukrainian government will contribute to strengthening oversight and accountability of the US assistance to Ukraine." Again, this goes back to what I was talking about with regard to corruption in the last video, is that when it comes to weapons, and US weapons particularly, the oversight is there. This is what really, really annoys me when I hear particularly certain Republican politicians in the US saying there is no accountability for these weapons. We don't know where these weapons are gone. We don't know where this money has gone. There's more accountability for the US money and weapons to Ukraine than any other theatre of war in the history of the last 100 years, I'm sure. That is okay, that's somewhat speculative, but actually no, you've got groups of people, you've got teams making sure the oversight is there. So it really annoys me. It's lying. It's essentially lying to say, if you hear a US politician say, we don't know where the equipment has gone, we don't know where the money has gone, that needs to be called out. You need to say, hang on, where's your evidence? You're just saying that because it's politically useful for you to say that, but it's a lie, and you need to be called out on that. While India, so going on to India, keeps the massive inflow of Russian oil, it pivots away from Russian arms and to Western technology as well as domestically manufactured arms. This is something that's been reported on widely. There used to be a really big importer of Russian gear, and now as nations like India and China started to produce their own equipment, they don't need people like Russia to provide equipment, particularly in the cheaper bog standard equipment sort of areas where they can compete. Right, so if you're just going to be some kind of, I don't know, APC or machine gun or this or that, they can do that instead of going to buy the Russians maybe. It could well be the high-end stuff that places like China and India might want to still buy from Russia, or, as we're hearing, will look elsewhere. So, quote, "We are not likely to sign any major military deal with Russia," said Nandan Unikrishnan, Krishnan, a Russian expert at the New Delhi think tank, the Observer Research Foundation. This is the second major bad news for Russia. Another unresolved issue is a huge amount of Indian rupees, which Russia has accumulated from the oil and gas sales. India pays only with its own currency, which is not freely convertible and stored in Indian banks. India's restrictions over capital flows make it impossible to transmit the money back to Russia. In fact, $1 billion in rupees come each month on top of the pile, which are vastly useless for Moscow, while India makes a huge profit on the world market. In other words, they're paying in rupees, but that appears to be staying in India and therefore would need to be used to pay for Indian stuff, but Russia doesn't really have that need, and so therefore that payment to Russia isn't useful. It's like it's a real issue. Joe Bloggs often talks about the situation with Russia having to take money in terms of yuan and rupees, and that being a massive issue for them. India offered that the money is invested in Indian infrastructure where Russian construction companies can participate, but that would contribute nothing to Russia's short-term needs and even less to Russia's war industry. India has Moscow completely where it wants it to be. Hence, it's only understandable that India keeps that Russian oil inflow intact and pretends to have good ties. This instance shows vividly how dependent Russia has become. The Russian babbling of the global south along its posturing is less enticing when the Potemkin covers have been kicked away. It is no different with China, where Russia's dependency is increasing with even bigger paces. Superior powers can cheaply buy Russian gas with their own currency and with strings attached to Russia. History has coined entities like Russia where this kind of one-sided agreement has been established with one term: vassal states. This is so true. And India, China are both in the power positions when doing anything with Russia. Russia are freaking desperate. They're so desperate that because they are spending 30% of their budget on the war. The war is going badly. The people are dying. They've got a labor shortage and they've got a lower price for their hydrocarbons, and those nations buying the hydrocarbons who aren't adhering to sanctions are buying that at a cheaper rate, and they're buying the crude version, which is the lower value stuff, and refining it themselves and adding value themselves, and then they're doing that by paying in yuan and rupees. And all of that means that Russia going forward is in a really precarious financial position, economic position. It's not looking good for Russia. So, yeah. Right, going on to geopolitical stuff, even though we've been kind of broadly talking about that. This is a Fox News person questioning Lankford. Now, James Lankford is a Republican senator who is, I think, a decent senator trying his damnedest to get a bipartisan agreement on the border sorted. And I think he needs to be supported big time. He's doing the right thing. Now, listen to this question from the Fox News host here. Listen to how it is framed.
That are not being enforced. So why give him this in an election year, the cover of this deal that, critics say is still going to let a lot of people in, but he gets to take a victory lap that he's gotten something done. Yeah.
Why, Republican senator? Why bother doing a border deal? We shouldn't be doing a border deal because, they're quite often, it's really interesting when you hear some of the Republican some of the Fox News presenters, they've even started saying we, the Republican Party. It's like, whoa. And I know there's a difference between infotainment and news on there, and how much is infotainment, how much is news is questionable. But when they start saying we, then, that's pretty partisan. But anyway, to frame it in that way is to say that actually, there shouldn't be a deal on the border because that will give Biden something to celebrate, and we can't let him have that, and so therefore there should be no deal, which means there should be no aid to Ukraine.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not going to let a bunch of people in. It's focused on actually turning people around on it. It is interesting. Republicans 4 months ago would not give funding for Ukraine, for Israel, and for our southern border because we demanded changes in policy. So we actually locked arms together and said, we're not going to give you money for this. We want a change in law. And now it's interesting, a few months later, when we're finally getting to the end, they're like, oh, just kidding. I actually don't want a change in law because it's a presidential election year.
This is coming from the very Republican doing the deal, that's done the deal, that's got a reform bill that is so past where the Democrats would have gone previously, right? It is far more towards what the Republicans want. And he's now saying very openly that now other Republican lawmakers say, "Oh, just kidding. We didn't really want a deal because." Like, he knows, he's a guy that's right in the middle of this. He knows what's going on. So don't shoot me. Don't have a go at me if you're pro this or anti that. Like, this is coming from the very person doing the deal making.
All have an oath to the Constitution, and we have a commitment to say we're going to do whatever we can to be able to secure the border. Just as a quick, for instance, the last 4 months, we've had 50 people cross our border on the terror watch list. 50. We've had tens of thousands of people that were declared by this administration a national security risk that came across our border and were released. It is our constitutional obligation to be able to secure our country as fast as we can secure our country. This puts in mandatory pieces that haven't been there in the past to make this administration actually enforce the law. I would tell you that I don't know of anyone that believes that if President Trump was elected, well, he was president right now, this border would not have this problem. So the thought that somehow President Biden can suddenly be the pro-national security president in the final months of this is not.
So I think that's a really good expression of what's going on there, and I think that guy needs to be definitely supported. Just on the border issue, I've had a few conversations with people who say, "Oh, it's all about fentanyl." God damn it, fentanyl's a problem. It's that Mexican border. We need to shut down those illegals. Just to give you a bit of context on that, this is from the Cato Institute, which is essentially a right-wing libertarian institute. Like, this is Cato do not like the Democrats and do not like Biden. However, back in September 2022, they released this. Fentanyl is smuggled for US citizens by US citizens, not asylum seekers. And basically, these bullet points are just massively important. So fentanyl smuggling is ultimately funded by US consumers who pay for illicit opioids, nearly 99% of whom are US citizens. In 2021, US citizens were 86.3% of the convicted fentanyl drug traffickers, 10 times greater than convictions of illegal immigrants for the same offense. Over 90% of fentanyl seizures occur at legal crossing points or interior vehicle checkpoints, not on illegal migration routes. So US citizens who are subject to less scrutiny when crossing legally are the best smugglers. The location of smuggling makes sense because hard drugs at ports of entry are about 97% less likely to be stopped than are people crossing illegally between them. Just 0.02% of the people arrested by Border Patrol for crossing illegally possessed any fentanyl whatsoever. The government exacerbated the problem by banning most legal cross-border traffic in 2020 and 2021, accelerating a switch to fentanyl, the easiest to conceal drug. During the travel restrictions, fentanyl seizures at ports quadruples from fiscal year 2019 to 21. Fentanyl went from a third of combined heroin and fentanyl seizures to over 90%, and annual deaths from fentanyl nearly doubled from 2019 to 21 after the government banned most travel and asylum. So this is, well, my t-shirt says it all. It's a bit more complicated than that. So shutting down illegal migration across the border from Mexico to the US will not solve the fentanyl problem, yet that's what many people are claiming is rationale for shutting down illegal migration. I'm not saying illegal migration shouldn't shut down. I'm saying that if that's your reasoning, we need to be more accurate. Just stop jumping on talking points that are essentially inaccurate. Now, there are border issues that need to be sorted out, and it looks like Langford has done a damn good job of actually getting something that is, as I've said, far more than the Democrats would have imagined before, and that's because of the leverage of Ukraine and the impasse of Congress in general, and the fact that this is one of the least productive sessions of Congress in the history of the institution. So, yeah. Russian propagandists have discussed whether a Russian, or all the while there's this impasse and people worrying or saying that Ukraine should be Europe's problem, it's not America's problem, etc., etc. Russian propagandists are discussing whether the Russia-China military alliance will be possible in the near future, so a formalized alliance, and that includes Iran and North Korea. You've got propagandists on TV talking, like, imagine you're Russian like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and you're like, yeah, do you know what? In 3 years' time, your best mates are going to be North Korea and Iran, and everyone else in the world's going to think you're a bit of a dick. Like, imagine Russians then. We'd be like, don't be silly. Like 3 years later, oh yeah, who are our mates again? Oh yeah, North Korea. Can we go on holiday there? I guess so, but it's a bit rubbish. How about Iran? Yeah, I guess you can go there, but it's a bit rubbish. I mean, there's a lovely place in Iran, but not really a holiday destination. I mean, this is where Russia's gone, and talking about the economy, talking about like the prospects, talking about your aspirations for who you're going to be as a country going forward. You're just not in a good place, and you're not in a good place because what you decided to do in February 2022, and Putin being a dictator who's made one of the single worst decisions in living memory. But all the while, Russia are still trying to mix things up. They love chaos. They love trying to make the world not know what the hell is going on, and poke a hornet's nest there and poke a hornet's nest there. Kremlin is preparing to destabilize Moldova, according to the Institute for the Study of War, likely as a part of the efforts to hinder its EU integration, among other objectives, the ISW wrote in January 28th assessment. Now, we've heard recently that a right-wing politician in Hungary is saying that they would like to have Transcarpathia as part of Hungary if Ukraine loses the war. We've got a right-wing politician in Romania saying similar things. I wonder who are backing these people. I wonder who's underwriting those opinions, who's funding those parties. And this resurgence of the far right in Europe is massively, I wrote an article on this just a few weeks ago actually, that links that resurgence of the far right in Europe with Russia. Russia are underwriting that massively. NATO General Alliance must be prepared for potential Russian missile strikes in Europe. This is then going back to the idea that Russia really are a threat, and if they get together with China, North Korea, and Iran and make that axis of evil more formalized, then Russian missile strikes in Europe are something we need to prepare for. NATO should be prepared for the prospect of Russian missile attacks in Europe in the event of an all-out war with Russia, says Lieutenant General Alexander Solfrank, a commander of NATO's Military Logistics Center in Germany, in an interview with the Times. Now, Emil Castelhelmi reports this is a good news story on a European nation that has not allowed that pro-Kremlin, far right or even far left, whatever it may be, to find a place in their political landscape. The presidential election is underway in Finland. The first round is now over. No candidate got over 50% of the vote, so there will be a second round. So the one candidate from the centre-right National Coalition, Alexander Stubb, National Coalition Party, got 27.2% of the votes. And then Pekka Haivisto from the Green League got 25.8% of the votes. The Greens in Finland are usually centre-left, but there are also centre-right people in it as well. I define both candidates as mostly liberal. However, Alexander Stubb has a better chance of appealing to conservative right-wingers, while Pekka Haivisto will appeal to the leftists. The candidates from the traditional leftist party, Social Democratic Party and Left Alliance, got only 9.4% of the votes, so most leftists voted for Haivisto in this first round already. There's also no strictly conservative option on the second round. In his campaign, Haivisto has also sought right-wing votes, as in order to win, he has to get liberals to vote him from the right, left and centre. Stubb is the likely winner, but the race is still on. He will receive the results of the next round, or we will receive them, in the next 2 weeks. Both Stubb and Haivisto have their pros and cons, but both would also make good presidents. Now, what's also super important, or what is perhaps the most important for where we're concerned, one thing should be noted. In this presidential election, there were no pro-Russian candidates. Not a single one. Left, right, conservative or liberal. All are firmly pro-Ukraine and all think the aid to Ukraine should continue. Job done. Brilliant. And good to see Thierry there giving his opinion. Or asking a question. This is super important. Now, an investigation has taken place by it's one of the Russian exiled newspapers, I think, has investigated a Latvian member of European Parliament, so an MEP. So in Europe, for those who aren't in Europe, you get not in the UK because it's not the case anymore, but when we were in the EU, you would vote in your general elections for your local MP who would represent you in one of 650 constituencies in the UK, and they go, and it's representative democracy, so they'd take your needs and desires and go to Westminster and vote on your behalf in Parliament. And then we'd vote in larger regions for a member of European Parliament who would then go to the to Europe, to Brussels, to the EU, and vote on your behalf in the EU. And so a Latvian member of the European Party, Tatiana Zdanoka, a long-serving member of the European Parliament from Latvia, is allegedly an agent working with Russian intelligence services, according to a collaborative investigation released by the independent Russian media outlet. Oh, yeah, The Insider. So that is interesting. And finally, one of Putin's many villas is now bigger than Monaco, investigators have found. Construction of the pad in Karelia, so that's near Finland, started 10 years ago. The Tsar has now even appropriated a waterfall from a national park. Full videos here. So you can watch a video on this. Here's a man with over 11 super yachts. He's got that palace in Sochi. He's got all these things and places that he can't enjoy. When do you get a chance to go on them? And why have this? I look at my house, right? I've got a kind of medium-sized house, right? And I think, God, I never go in that spare room up there. What's the point of having it? Okay, so when we have friends round, we can... Okay, so that's cool. Like, I go into this room, I stay in this room for most of the day, and then I poot around the kitchen, I go in the garden, blah, blah, blah. But I think, what's the point of having... Like, I could have a massive house. Yeah, okay, if I'm that rich, I'd have a gym and a swimming pool, okay. But, like... 5 houses, 11 super yachts. It's just despicable. And of course, all that money, you've got to remember that Putin is a public servant, right? He has money. Like, he's only ever had jobs that give him income from the state, right? So how come he's now in a position where he's the single richest man in the world? He has 11 super yachts, and he's building something bigger than the size of Monaco, on grounds bigger than the size of Monaco. Where's that money coming from? He is a kleptocrat, so it's stolen from the state. It's stolen from the people of Russia. That is money he's extracting from... so Bill Browder says he takes 50%, isn't it, of... is it of profits, of income? I don't know. Of, like, the oligarchs, formerly the state-owned enterprises like, Rosneft or whatever, or these oil companies and a natural resource company. He's creaming off that and buying all this stuff that he's never going to be able to appreciate anyway, or at least only appreciate in the merest of ways. I mean, the finite amount of time he's got left, he's not even going to be able to walk around the extent of that place in Karelia. Now, that is money that should have been spent on the nation. That should have been taxed rather than personally taxed. It should have been taxed by the state so that Russian citizens can have heating that's not broken down and depending on pipes that were built in the 1960s, right? That's what should, the Russian population should be absolutely incensed by this kind of overt kleptocracy. It's terrible. Putin is a terrible human being. And this is just yet another example of how he is a terrible human being. Ugh. Thanks for watching. Take care. Speak soon. Toodle pips.